Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the psychology of holding on. We're going to unpack exactly why letting go can be just so incredibly difficult for so many of us. Have you ever just stood in a room, looked at a mountain of old magazines, or maybe some busted electronics, and thought, why on earth is someone keeping this? I mean, to the rest of the world, it's literally garbage, right? It's a totally fair question, and validating that curiosity is exactly where we need to start. From the outside looking in, holding on to seemingly useless stuff looks completely irrational. But here's the thing. Our brains rarely do things for absolutely no reason, even if that reason is completely invisible to the naked eye. We are so quick to jump to this unfair societal stereotype, aren't we? We label the behavior as sheer laziness or being messy or just lacking basic organizational skills. We assume the person simply doesn't want to clean up. But the psychological reality, it is entirely different. Struggling to let go of physical items is rarely about the objects themselves. It's actually this deeply complex survival mechanism. It is a profound subconscious search for emotional security in a world that, honestly, often feels totally out of their control. And that brings us to our first major psychological theme, the idea of objects acting as anchors in a chaotic world. To the mind of someone who really struggles to let go, their physical environment heavily dictates their inner sense of stability. The core driver here is just a massive craving for stability. Let's be real, life is messy, it's unpredictable, and frankly, it can be completely overwhelming. For a lot of folks, keeping seemingly useless items provides a powerful antidote to all that chaos. An object, it represents a constant. It doesn't change, it doesn't just up and leave, and most importantly, it's something they can actually control. By surrounding themselves with these items, they are actively creating a grounded space where they feel safe. They know exactly what is in that room and where it came from, and that brings a much-needed sense of predictability to a really unpredictable world. But it goes so much deeper than just trying to control the environment. For some people, objects aren't just things taking up space. They are literal, physical mirrors of their identity and their self-respect. Psychologists actually call this an identity threat. See, our brains heavily associate our external environments with our internal sense of self. So for these individuals, their very identity is built around these physical anchors. When you tell them to just throw an item away, their brain doesn't process that as cleaning. It processes it as a literal threat to who they are. Removing that item feels like losing a piece of themselves, or maybe losing a version of themselves they just aren't ready to let go of yet. It's a terrifying loss of control over their own personal story. And that is exactly why the emotional pain of decluttering is so incredibly intense. Then there's another major factor keeping people anchored to objects: rumination. Now, rumination is this mental pattern where the brain just repeatedly replays the past over and over again. In this dynamic, a physical object becomes what we call a memory anchor. The brain basically convinces itself that if it tosses the physical item, it's going to permanently lose the ability to revisit that specific memory, or to finally make sense of something that happened in the past. So how does this trap of emotional rumination actually play out? Well, first, the person sees the object, which instantly triggers that memory anchor. Next, they revisit that past moment on a loop in their mind. But here is the critical failure in that final step. They are seeking clarity instead of closure. Instead of processing the past and moving forward, they keep the object so they can stay stuck in this loop of what was. They're hoping that just by holding on to the item, they're eventually going to find the emotional resolution they're so desperately looking for. But this isn't just about dwelling on what's already happened. It's also about how the brain actively anticipates things that haven't even happened yet, the fear of future loss. Our brains are fundamentally prediction machines. This is a concept known as predictive processing. It's the brain's natural evolutionary wiring to constantly scan the horizon and ask, okay, what happens next? But for individuals who hoard or who really struggle to let go, this natural processing just goes into absolute overdrive. It creates a massive cognitive bias where the person gets locked in this state of constantly predicting future loss, endlessly agonizing over worst-case what-if scenarios. And that cognitive bias usually sounds exactly like this. What if I need this one day and it's gone? That is the raw internal monologue running constantly in the background of their minds. And it highlights an incredibly deep vulnerability. It's the absolute terror of being caught without resources, of being left totally vulnerable and unequipped in some future emergency. So keeping every single spare cable, every extra glass jar, or stacks of old newspapers, That is not about practical planning. It is all about emotional self-protection. It acts as an emotional armor, built up against a hypothetical future where they might feel replaceable, helpless, or totally unsupported. They keep the object to guarantee, in their minds, that they are never left exposed to those terrifying feelings. Which brings us to a really heartbreaking reality. We have to talk about filling emotional gaps and how objects are frequently drafted into service to fill these voids. Psychology reveals that when real-life human relationships are failing or absent or just causing a lot of pain, we often use external, physical things as substitutes to meet our fundamental emotional needs. Objects frequently become these silent companions. Think about it. If someone feels unheard, dismissed, or totally replaceable in their human relationships, their brain might just pivot to possessions for a reliable sense of value. Because objects, they don't argue with you. They never pack up their bags and leave you. They provide this constant, uncompromising presence that creates an artificial sense of being surrounded. Keeping things around can temporarily, but very effectively, soothe the acute pain of feeling lonely or ignored by the real world. As we bring all these psychological threads together, I want to prepare you for a final paradigm shift. It's time for rethinking human behavior. To truly grasp this whole picture, we have to recognize that people who struggle to let go actually perceive the physical world on a sensory level far differently than the rest of us do. Some people just possess heightened sensory processing. They're naturally way more detail-oriented. So where you or I might just see a piece of trash, they notice small hidden histories. They see the really specific, beautiful craftsmanship in a completely broken tool. They actively feel the unique texture of a worthless old ticket stub. Because their brains don't automatically filter these minor details out like most people's do, every single item feels incredibly unique and important. To them, throwing an item away isn't just a cleaning exercise. It literally feels like the active destruction of something with distinct, absolutely unrepeatable value. So the next time you see a cluttered room, a packed garage, or a really deeply disorganized desk, ask yourself, what invisible emotions will you look for? Because once you understand these hidden patterns, the craving for stability, the fear of losing their identity, the heavy emotional armor, you stop just seeing messiness. You start seeing a human being trying to protect their sense of self. And that completely changes how we understand each other. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and always keep looking beneath the surface.